Balto the Hero, adapted by Angela Tung, based on the motion picture story by Cliff Ruby and Elana Lesser. Screenplay by Cliff Ruby and Elana Lesser. "Oh no," Ruby gasped. "Poor Balto." But before anyone could blink, Balto scooped up Rosy's hat and raced safely across the street. He handed it to Rosy and smiled shyly at Jenna. "What a crazy thing to do," Rosy said. She looked back at Jenna, who was grinning. Just to show off to a pretty dog. Then Rosy felt a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Rosy!" It was her father. "Stay away from that dog. He might bite you. He's half wolf," he said, waving a broom fiercely. Balto turned and sadly walked away from Rosy and Jenna. The grown-ups were wrong. Balto knew he wasn't bad. He just wished there was some way he could prove it. A few days later, Balto saw Jenna alone outside the hospital. Here was his chance. Jenna seemed so nice. Maybe now they could be friends. But when Balto came closer, he saw that Jenna was crying. "Jenna, what's wrong?" Balto asked. "Rosy's in there," Jenna told him. "She's really sick. What's wrong with her, Balto?" Balto climbed up beside Jenna and looked inside. The doctor was taking Rosy's temperature. He frowned. "Rosy's fever is very high," the doctor told Rosy's parents, "and I don't like the sound of her cough." "What do you think it is, doctor?" Rosy's father asked. "Looks like diphtheria," the doctor answered. He shook his head. "And I'm out of medicine." The next morning, the doctor sent out an important telegram to Anchorage. "Urgent. Stop. More diphtheria medicine. Stop. Nome in grave danger. Stop." But getting more medicine wasn't going to be easy. The biggest snowstorm in years had hit Alaska. No trains or planes would be able to get through. There was only one way to get the medicine, by dog sled. So the town held a race to see which dogs were the fastest. "I'm going to run in that race," Balto told Boris. He knew he was fast. He knew he could win. He had to help Rosy, no matter what. "On your mark. Get set. Go!" The dogs ran and ran. Suddenly, Balto burst ahead of the pack and sped across the finish line. First, but the other dogs turned their backs on him. "Get out of here, wolf dog." Steel, the lead dog, snarled. "We don't want you on our team." That very night, the rescue team took off without Balto. At first, all went well. The team picked up the medicine without any trouble. But the trip home was not as easy. It began to snow harder and harder. The heavy snow blinded the team and covered their trail. "Steal!" one of the dogs shouted. "We're lost. Maybe we should turn around." But Steele wouldn't listen. "I'm not lost," he growled. Back in Nome, everyone was worried. The team had missed their second checkpoint. They had lost the trail. Balto paced back and forth outside the hospital. Through a window, he could see Rosy and Jenna. Rosy looked so tired. Balto had to do something. He had to find the team and bring the medicine back. So later that night, with his friends Boris and Muck and Luck, 2 polar bear cubs, Balto headed off into the dark, snowy wilderness. Balto put his nose to the ground and sniffed. Steele and his team had been here. "This way!" Balto shouted to the cubs, and Boris over the howling wind. They trudged past some trees and around a big rock. Then Balto stopped. All of a sudden, he felt like someone was watching him. Row! It was a grizzly bear. He lunged at Balto with one huge paw. Balto could see the bear's long claws gleaming. Balto jumped just in time and clamped his sharp teeth onto the bear's leg. Growl! The bear roared in pain, and he flung Balto off him. Balto flew through the air and crashed against a tree. He sank to the ground. The bear came closer. Oh no! Was Balto done for? No! Just then another shape came charging out of nowhere. It was Jenna. She pounced on the bear and sank her teeth into his shoulder. Growl! The bear growled again, angrier than ever. He slashed at Jenna's leg and knocked her away too. By now, Balto was back on his feet and ready to defend Jenna. The bear lunged, and the two tumbled down a steep ravine and onto the frozen river. Crack! The ice was breaking. Jenna, Boris, and the cubs gathered at the top of the ravine. They watched as the bear struggled to get back to shore, but it was too late. Whoosh! The icy river swallowed up the bear before their eyes. And Balto, too. Balto! Boris and Jenna cried. Geronimo! Muck and Luck splashed into the water after Balto. Jenna and Boris looked up and down the river. Where are they? Jenna cried. Finally, Luck burst through the ice. Then Muck and Balto popped up like corks after him, coughing and shivering. Together, the cubs dragged Balto to shore. I was so scared, Boris told Balto. I got people bumps. Then Jenna spoke up. I saw your tracks in the snow, and I had to follow you, she explained. But Jenna could not go on. Her bear wound was worse than she had thought. You must go without me, she told Balto. Rosy is depending on you. Then she slipped off her bright red bandana and gave it to Balto. Balto smiled and turned to his friends. Muck, Luck, you pull Jenna back to town, he said, and Boris, you lead them. As Balto watched his friends walk off through the snow, he felt lonely and a little scared. But he also knew he had a job to do. He had to find the lost sled team and the medicine. Fast. He sniffed a tree and headed off alone. Balto came to the top of yet another hill and sniffed the air. Could it be? Balto looked down into the valley. Yes! There they were, the lost sled team. Balto raced down the ravine. The other dogs could hardly believe their eyes. Balto, they cried. How did you find us? How do we get home? I marked the trail, Balto told them. Now, follow me. I can lead you. Back in Nome, Rosy's family waited and worried while Boris, Muck, and Luck kept a lookout from their old fishing boat home. Suddenly, they heard a howl in the distance. It sounded like Balto! Breaking through a hill of snow, he proudly led the sled team and the medicine into town. He threw his head back and howled again. Awoo! The whole town rushed into the street. Hooray! They cried. Hooray for Balto! Not dog, not wolf, Boris told his friend. You are hero. The doctor carefully lifted the box of medicine from the sled and carried it into the hospital to give to the children. Balto stood hopefully by Rosy's bed. At last, she opened her eyes and smiled. Balto, she said, I'd be lost without you. Rosy's father patted Balto on the head. We'd all be lost without you, Balto, Rosy's father said. Then Jenna came over to Balto. I knew you'd make it back, she told him. I'm glad you believed in me, Balto said. Then they softly touched noses, together and happy at last.